Hi guys, welcome back. Okay, last lesson. This is going to be lesson 97. So in lesson 97, we're looking at transversals. And actually we're looking at more than just a transversal. We're looking at the angle relationships that are formed by transversals. So when it says transversal, that's actually referring to this line right here that cuts through two or more lines. So if you notice, there's two lines here that transversal is passing through. Okay, so that is actually what a transversal is. It is a line that crosses through two or more lines, creating these groups of angles that you see here, okay? And I've gone ahead and labeled these groups of angles so that it'll be a little bit easier for me to identify the different relationships that we're gonna talk about, okay? So the transversal cutting through these lines, the other important thing to note is that these two lines, when they are parallel, makes all these relationships congruent or equal to each other, okay? And we're gonna talk about that a little bit more, but just hold on to that thought. So the first set of angles or angle relationships that we have are called corresponding angles. So corresponding angles are basically angles that are kind of in the same position in each group. So we talked about there's two groups of angles being made here. So if you notice, angle 1 is in the top left hand position here in this set of angles, then its corresponding angle would also be in the top left hand position of this other group of angles, okay? So both of these angles, their relationship would be called corresponding angles. Again, that's because they are in the same position in the set of angles. So another example could be 2 and 6 are in the same position, or 3 and 7 are both in the same position. So all of those would be examples of corresponding angles. Okay, alternate interior angles is another relationship that we have here. So alternate interior angles, let's kind of break that down because it sounds like a lot, but if we break it down, I think you're gonna see that the terms really help us to identify that without having to memorize definitions for these things. So alternate means opposite sides of the transversal. So if one of them is on the right hand side of this transversal, the other angle is going to be on the left hand side of the transversal, okay? So we've got alternate, meaning opposite sides, and interior, meaning inside these parallel lines. So that already cuts our options in half because we're taking away all those angles that are outside. So we're narrowing in on the interior or the inside angles, and then we're looking for opposites. So we could say 3 is inside and its opposite on the other side of the transversal would be 6. So that would be an example of alternate, opposite sides of the transversal, interior, because they're both inside the parallel lines. And again, you want any of these examples, they should be coming from different sets. So like one from this set of points and one from this set of angles, one from this set of angles, okay? So that's alternate interior. Okay, now let's look at alternate exterior. You can use those context clues again. Alternate, meaning opposite sides of the transversal. Exterior, you guessed it, outside the parallel lines. So if interior means inside the parallel lines, then exterior means we are cutting out all these middle guys and now we're only looking at the outside angles. So we could take 2 and we could say, oh, that marker is dried out. And we could say 2 has an opposite or alternate angle of 7 down here. They're both outside of the parallel lines and they are on opposite sides of the transversal. So another example of that could be 1 is outside and its opposite would be 8 on the outside down here. Okay, so the ones that I'm using as examples, the ones that I've colored up here as examples, are definitely not the only cases of those relationships that we see here. They're just the ones that I'm showing you, that I'm pointing out, so that you will have a concrete example to look at when you're doing these. So let's look at what an example would look like. So if we have, let me just erase all this real quick. So if we have a set of parallel lines given to us like this, they are being cut by a transversal, okay? And then they've identified all these angles as A, B, C, D, and E, F, G, H, okay? Then we're being asked to identify a few different angle relationships here. So A says name the pairs of corresponding angles. So that's wanting you to name all pairs of corresponding angles, okay? So A, we would say, okay, corresponding we learned are the ones that are in the same positions in each set. So like A is in the top left in this setup here. E is in the top left in this setup here. So A and E would be one example, okay? Then the next group could be B and F. They are both in the same position. Oops. Okay, D and H are in the same position, and C and G. So those all have corresponding angles. That's their relationship, okay? The next one asks us to name the pairs of alternate interiors. So remember we said alternate, opposite sides of the transversal. Interior means inside the parallel line. So we're only focusing in on these guys, okay? So the only alternate interior angles we have are D and F, and then C and E, okay? Then it asks us to identify the pairs of alternate exterior angles. Same thing, opposite sides of the transversal, but now we're closing off all these guys inside and we're only looking outside. So A and G are both outside and they are on opposite sides of the transversal, as well as B and H, okay? And the last one says, if the measure of angle A, which is this one up here, is 115 degrees, then what are the measures of angles E and F? Okay, so now we kind of touched on this before, but I said any of these relationships, corresponding, alternate interior, or alternate exterior, they are all equal to each other, okay? So if we know that A and E, we already identified them as corresponding angles, that means they are equal to each other. So if A is 115 degrees, E is also 115 degrees. Now, one new thing that we did not talk about yet is that when you have two angles in the same group that together form a line, those angles are what we call supplementary, meaning that they together make up 180 degrees. So these are supplementary angles, and supplementary angles always have a sum of 180 degrees, okay? So this one is 115 degrees. Then to find its supplement over here, F, all we have to do is subtract 180. Let me get a pen that's a little darker. That's kind of hard to see. We'll get 180 minus, that's not much better, is it? Minus 115. So when we subtract those, we end up with 65 degrees. So this guy over here is 65 degrees. And that's it. So if you have any questions on any of this, you can either email me or you can save a question for when we do our Zoom classroom. Please be making notes of questions that you have as you're doing the homework or as you're watching these videos, anything like that. Any questions that you have, please keep track of them. And I would love to address them and go over them with you. So have fun doing your homework, and I look forward to talking to you guys soon. Thanks, bye.